All right, welcome everybody. I don't have any fancy music for you, but we're sitting on a patio in Toronto after a ridiculously good lunch, by the way. It's SDH Wall Pass Wednesday, live on the road. Jason Longshore, Mike Conti from Toronto, ahead of Atlanta United in Toronto tonight. It's a Wall Pass Wednesday, so we have to take your questions on a day like this. Thanks to John for putting everything together this morning. Thanks to Doug for making some time for the interview. Thanks to Joe as well. Hopefully you've checked that out on the SDH app at soccerdownhere.net and on Spreaker. But now we can get interactive a little bit. So send your questions our way on Twitter at soccerdownhere, and we'll get to them. We have to give a plug to Alexandros in downtown Toronto. If you're in downtown Toronto and you want an Eero, this is where you need to come.
I didn't grow up in Atlanta. I grew up in Philadelphia. When you were growing up, did they have photo mats in Atlanta?
Yes.
You remember those old photo mats? So basically, they've taken an old photo mat and they put bars on the windows here at the Yonge Street Water Taxi Terminal. And now they sell Euros out of here, and it was amazing. And they're open until 4 in the morning, so I think we'll probably come here after the match tonight as well. It's been great. But
yes.
That's why you hear all the street noise in the background. We're on one of the main streets in Toronto, and just giving you a little bit of the local flavor on a Wednesday afternoon. Beautiful day. It's going to be a beautiful night here. Temperatures in the 70s, not humid. It's a little windy because you're on the lake, but no rain to worry about tonight, knock on wood. So great night for soccer, great night for Atlanta United to get back into it. But yeah, this Creek food was legit.
Oh my
gosh. Only had 4 stars on Yelp. I give it 5 all the way. It was awesome.
I'll make up some Yelp accounts to give it more stars because it was that good, and definitely coming back after the match. It's an interesting one for Atlanta United because you're going into this where you do have to look at the next month and all of the matches that are coming up. And for me, that's what makes this even more important tonight and Saturday against Montreal and even next Wednesday against Chicago, because it gets more difficult after that with the quality of opponent, and you need to start this run on a hot streak.
Yeah, I totally agree. We talked about it on stoppage time yesterday, and to not disrespect TFC at all, but let's look at them realistically right now. 5 players out on international duty. You could have Mavinga and Aro out as well on injuries, so they're going to be shorthanded. They look completely adrift Saturday night in Dallas, outshot 22-6, lost 3-0, could have been worse. So you don't want to disrespect them, but looking at them realistically, you feel like you've got a really good chance to get 3 points tonight. You feel like you have a pretty good chance to get 3 points Saturday at home against Montreal. I think you feel really, really good about your chance to get 3 points in Chicago. Beyond that, Red Bulls, not so much. Seattle on the road after playing U.S. Open Cup, not so much. Houston a couple days after playing Seattle, not so much. D.C. a few days after playing Houston, not so much. So you got to get your points where you can. And it's not like it's a must-win game or anything like that. I mean, you're fine right now. You still have your matches in hand. You can still be in first place in the East by the end of this week and can do so even if you were to get a draw in one of the next 2 matches. But you're right. From a standpoint of momentum, you want to keep this going. Across all competitions, you've won 9 of your last 11, okay? And 4 in a row across all competitions. You want to keep that going. You laid a lot of positive groundwork in U.S. Open Cup with a lineup last Tuesday in Columbus that I think will be relatively similar to what we see tonight because Atlanta United's got players out too.
Right.
So it's a good opportunity tonight for a player like Brandon Vasquez to earn some more time with the first team. But I think just in general, a team like Atlanta United, it feels like they're a rhythm and momentum team, doesn't it? And they didn't have a lot of momentum and rhythm in February and March, and look where it got them at the end of March. Now it feels like they're playing with that momentum and rhythm. You got to keep it going.
Well, that last run of games in May, we talked about how important it was to get started well, and they rode that. And they dropped a couple of games in it, but you have to look at the games as a whole. And when I look at these next 8 in league play, we'll leave the Open Cup game out of it for now. You look at the next 8, if you average 2 points per game, you're doing really well. That's 16 points. Yeah. You've got 9 up at the beginning of this that are there for the taking in a lot of ways. And I think you need to try to take full advantage. When you factor in how hard it is to win on the road and you have 2 matches out of the first 3 that are winnable games on the road, you have to take full advantage. And yes, Atlanta's going to be a little shorthanded. Ezequiel Barco out injured after being kicked multiple times by the Columbus Crew, to something I'm sure we'll be getting into at some point. You're going to be missing Joseph Martinez. You're going to be missing Tito Villalba after getting kicked multiple times by the New York Red Bulls. You've got some people out. Julian Gressel, we would expect to see him tonight, maybe from the start. He had muscle tightness after that long run of games, and he looked like the player that probably needed the break more than anybody. When we talked to him after that last match against Chicago, I mean, what did he say? He was shattered?
Yeah, or broken, or,
or something very bad.
Or something very bad, but very German at the same time.
Yes.
No, you're right. I mean, honestly, I think I'm almost excited to see Gressel play tonight because he's going to be so fresh. And, that's not to say that Pity Martinez won't be fresh tonight, but I just look at Gressel, someone that when he's got the energy, he tends to play just at another level. This could potentially be a really big night tonight for Julian Gressel, I think, because as you said, you don't have Barco, you don't have Villalba. I think your left winger is a question. Is it going to be Miram? Is it going to be Dion Pereira?
Right.
And if Pitti plays centrally, you would assuming he does, and you don't know that, you would have the ability to maybe kind of flip-flop Gressel and Pitti as well. So I think it's an opportunity for Gressel tonight to show some of that more dynamic ability. I think you're fine in the midfield with all the absences. I even think you're fine on the back line. I mean, you're going to miss Franco Escobar tonight.
Yes.
But I think Michael Parkhurst has proven that he is absolutely more than capable to give you plenty at 90 minutes at right back going forward. You will miss him tonight. You do have Breck Shea. You do have the ability maybe to play Julian Gressel at right back if you absolutely had to. I don't think they will, but you could. So isn't it funny how everyone was complaining at the beginning of the year, Jason, about how Atlanta United, they claim they had so much depth, and clearly they don't. Well, now look at it, where you're without Barco, you're without Villalba, you're without Escobar, and you're really not overly concerned going into a league match tonight.
Yeah, you're okay. I mean, Toronto would love to have some of that depth right now, and they're missing 5 guys to international duty right now, and Atlanta's only missing 1. They do have a couple of injuries on top of that, but Toronto really struggling with depth, and that's been an issue since last year. I think a lot of teams around the league are going to get tested over this next month because Atlanta's not the only one with this type of schedule. This is just the reality for Major League Soccer right now is you have a lot of teams playing a lot of midweek matches and a lot of teams who are missing pieces to the Gold Cup and or Copa America, and it's going to show. I think Atlanta's better prepared than maybe anybody in the league to deal with it.
Right. Daniel Price comes in, by the way. I think we answered this question, Daniel, but if not, he wants a straight answer. Is Escobar out tonight on accumulation?
Yeah, yellow card accumulation.
He is absolutely out. No one else is on the tightrope. No one else is even close to the tightrope right now because remember, if you go 5 straight matches without a yellow, you get 1 deducted. So Atlanta United's in pretty good shape there. Toronto has no problems there either, for what it's worth. But Escobar will be back against Montreal on Saturday. And look, Frank's going to have to rotate a little, right?
Yeah, you kind of get it manufactured for you
here.
I
mean, but 4 matches in the next 2 weeks, 6 matches in the next 3 weeks. I mean, if you want to keep extending this, 8 in 3 weeks, 10 in 4, I mean, you could really kind of cringe at how many matches you have over the next month. So here is an opportunity for Frank to rotate because he doesn't have a choice. And Franco's a guy, with his work rate playing right back, he runs a ton. So you'd rather give him that break in the middle of this stretch as opposed to at the very beginning. But it sets up Franco Escobar very, very nicely for Saturday against Montreal if you want to look at the glass half full.
Yeah, he'll be fresh for Saturday. That's a big help. I do wonder tonight if Pity Martinez is on the right side, what the dynamic's like with Pity and probably Michael Parkhurst, or if Pity slides into the middle because he doesn't have that combination with Escobar behind him. I wonder if that factors into how the lineup looks and how it looks on the field a little bit.
Yeah, I'm trying to remember now if Gressel and Parkey have played together down the right. I
believe they have.
But it was in Columbus after Escobar got subbed off, and that was just a weird match in general. But this is the good thing about Open Cup, and it goes counter to the point on Gressel, but I think it's still important to point out is because you didn't have Joseph, because you only had Barco for a limited amount of time, because you didn't have Villalba, you were able to develop some new societies, weren't you?
Mm-hmm.
Especially in the attacking third. That's where, boy, I mean, Justin Miram, I think, has got to feel very, very good about where he is with this club right now, because he used U.S. Open Cup to really develop a lot of chemistry with Pity Martinez and with Brandon Vasquez, who we know absolutely is. I'd die of a heart attack if he didn't start at striker tonight. Frank DeBoer has said that he will. So that's good. That was a good thing that came out of these first two U.S. Open Cup matches for a guy like Miram. I think for a guy like Dion Pereira, the fact that they were able to find him some starts after that Red Bulls match when Tito got hurt, find him a start out in Salt Lake City, find him a start against Minnesota. He's gradually gotten better. So now he's developed some societies, maybe not so much with Vasquez, but certainly with Pity Martinez. So this is a good thing for Atlanta United, isn't it? I mean, they come into a match shorthanded, but not confused, because they've been able to work on a lot of different combinations over the international break, both in training and in matches, too. This has been very helpful.
It's been a really good fit. You've got 5 other MLS games tonight as well. We'll be keeping an eye on those. U.S. men's national team tonight at 9 o'clock Eastern, if I'm not mistaken. They're playing Panama in their final group stage game in the Gold Cup. They're going to advance. I'll be curious to see the highlights tonight after we finish up to see how they look, because that's where it is for me about the U.S. It's not as much a result here, but how do they look with the probability of some squad rotation as you start looking ahead to the knockout rounds?
Well, and didn't Berhalter even say the armband's going to keep rotating too? Like, everything's going to rotate.
Yeah, you're going to see things move around with the U.S. tonight.
But it's an important match.
It is.
I mean, if you're talking about playing Curacao or playing Jamaica in a knockout game, you want to play Curacao. Mm-hmm. So you've got to find at least a draw in this match tonight. This is not one that the U.S. men's national team can take the night off. No. Not at all. And Panama is a team that was in the last World Cup. They're unbeaten in group play so far. I think this is an extremely intriguing and very, very dangerous match tonight for the U.S. men's national team.
It's another good test, and it's one that I don't think the U.S. is playing well enough to overlook anybody right now, so they're going to have to be ready for the challenge that Panama brings. And look, Panama has kind of made a name for themselves in giving the United States problems in a Gold Cup.
They have, yeah, and in World Cup qualifying as well in the Hex. So, yeah, and they have MLS players.
Yep.
It'll be a very good test. I think, obviously, you're very excited with what happened Saturday night against Trinidad and Tobago, without question. Guyana is almost a throwaway match because the quality of Guyana is what it is. Boy, I would feel a lot better about the U.S. men's national team and what this year has been, which has been dodgy at best to this point, I think you could say.
That's one way to put it.
I would feel so much better tonight. It doesn't even have to be a gaudy scoreline. It just needs to be match control for 90 minutes.
Yep.
And if that gets you 1-0, I'm good with it. If it gets you 4-0, even better. If it gets you 1-1, but you're not outplayed, I'm fine with that too, because you win your group on goal difference. But I'm still, I feel better, but I'm not fully 100% convinced yet. And credit to Tyler Boyd. He's had a really, really good tournament. But I'm still looking for a little bit more from a guy like Josie Altidore. I'm looking for a lot more out of Will Trapp. Because knockout play is going to come quickly, and the margin for error will be gone by then. And I still think there are some things that need to develop with this team.
Yeah, it's definitely not there yet. And it's kind of like the U.S. women's team when you look at the way the group stage played out. They haven't really been tested yet. I think they'll get a little bit of a test tonight. It shouldn't be as much of a test as maybe I'm worried about it being, because I'm a little cynical when it comes to the U.S. men's national team right now. On the women's side, they got that test in the round of 16 against Spain. We thought maybe they'd get a test against Sweden, but Sweden rested a bunch of players in that one. It was pretty well controlled from the get-go. Spain gave the United States everything that they possibly could, and it took 2 penalties to get through it. Was the United States the better team in that match? It's debatable.
It was an even match.
It's not clearly either way. I think Spain dominated large stretches of it. They didn't have the striker that they needed up top to really take advantage of some of that. But they limited the U.S.'s effectiveness as well. There were no shots on goal outside of the 2 penalties.
Spain controlled the match tactically.
Yes.
France will not play the same way as Spain.
They might take some things from that, though.
Yeah, but I would be surprised if it was kick here, foul here.
The thing about France that they can do that Spain couldn't is France can truly play on the counter against the U.S. Spain's not fast enough to get out and hit you on the break. And it's not really their nature anyway. They want to knock the ball around a little bit. That's how they enjoy their game. France will draw you in, take the ball off of you, and play behind you and go. And they have the speed out wide to do it. And we saw that in the January match in France where the French won 3-1 and utterly dominated the U.S. in that one. That's why this has been the biggest fear as to this quarterfinal in Paris between these two teams, because last time they faced off, it was all France.
Right. This will be fun to talk about on Friday morning, too, when we get a little bit closer to it. It's the match we all wanted to see in this tournament. It's a little bit unfortunate we see it in the quarterfinal, not the final, but I think there is still the potential for us to have an outstanding final in this Women's World Cup if Germany or England get through on the other half of the bracket. It's going to be a very emotional match. I'm wondering how both teams manage the emotion. Sometimes playing at home in an emotional match can be a detriment. Mm-hmm. You can get too keyed up and have too much adrenaline, and you find yourself at the hour mark a little bit gassed because of it. France does have the benefit of an extra day of rest. I think it's going to be very curious to see how the USA manages the emotions of this match. Sadly, there's some people in their own country that aren't even rooting for them anymore, let alone what you're going to see in France on Friday. So
France is going to be interesting on Friday because the U.S. has bought more tickets to this tournament than anybody outside of France. Right. I think there will be a lot of American fans there. I think it might even feel a little more like a 50-50 type of vibe.
It could.
Which will be really interesting. That, in some ways, could help France. It could take some of that pressure off a little bit because I think they've struggled with that pressure during this tournament.
Yeah, but again, I keep coming back to the fact that I like that all the key U.S. players have been in this spot before, whereas France, none of their key players have been in this spot before, a pressure-packed World Cup match.
The two question marks are two who haven't been for the U.S. Crystal Dunn in her first tournament at left back. I think 1v1 ability, great. Tactically, she's not a left back, so at times that can hurt you. And Alyssa Nair, goalkeeper, and there's been a lot of questions about Nair because you've had two of the best goalkeepers in the history of the women's game, honestly, since the late 90s. You haven't worried about goalkeeper with the United States. Now, you do have to worry about it a little bit because there's been times where it's looked a little shaky, but there's a big legacy to live up to.
Well, I mean, I have no questions about Alyssa Nair whatsoever because if you want to win a big game, you turn to your Penn Staters. And Alyssa Nair and Ali Krieger, I'm sure, will be more than up to the challenge. Ali Krieger, who hit the game-winning penalty against Brazil in 2011, by the way, in the shootout. No, look, Alyssa Nair had I would say, a shocker on Monday. The ball she played to Sauerbrunn, putting Sauerbrunn in a really bad spot, produced the Spanish goal, and then that really allowed Spain to tactically do what they wanted to do in that match, which was play two lines of four.
They didn't have to open up.
Exactly. So, but that's one mistake in 270 minutes. Yeah. And now, on the opposite end, in group play, Nair was never even challenged.
Yeah, the couple times that things came up, I worried. The goal that Chile scored but was offside on, she didn't look good on coming off her line there, and I worry on crosses a little bit. And France is a team that dominates on set pieces. How is she going to handle that? That's what I fear this is going to come down to, is going to be France's ability both to defend set pieces, which is a strong point for the U.S. in terms of attacking them, but also score from set pieces. Right. They've had 5 of their 9 goals in the tournament from the set piece.
They've got the tallest player in the tournament, who's going to be a huge marking challenge for any team in the tournament, let alone the United States women's national team. I can't wait. It's going to be a fun match. I'm sorry I have to work during it, but at least, I work at a sports radio station. So
could be worse.
But we were talking about this here at Alexandra's, which, by the way, again, when you're in Toronto and you want Greek food, and Daniel Price, I see you, downtown Gainesville, Georgia, Alpha Euro. Yeah, it's good, I'm sure.
I'll have to check that out.
Toronto, Ontario against Gainesville, Georgia, and quality of international food. I'm going to lean more towards the photo mat here.
Sorry, Daniel.
In Toronto. We were talking about it, though, when we were eating our souvlaki and our gyros. Boy, if the U.S. women's national team could find a way to get past France, get through whatever semifinal opponent they have, it won't be as tough in all likelihood as what they're going to see on Friday. Oh, man. I mean, 2 weeks or a week from Sunday at the Benz with potentially the U.S. women's national team playing in a World Cup final, followed by Atlanta United Red Bulls. That would take a very unique day, a very fun day in Atlanta soccer history, and make it a very special day, because I think you would easily have 30,000 people in the building in time for kickoff of the World Cup game, probably filling to close to 70 by the time it's all said and done. And if there's 70,000 people in that building watching the Halo board, cheering on the U.S. women's national team, I have goosebumps just thinking about it. It would be a great, great moment, but I really hope this team can do their part and get by France. I would also say this. If they're knocked out on Friday, this tournament was not a failure.
No, not at all.
I really don't think that.
No, I don't think it has either.
Some people will say that. I don't believe that. I think we're at a point now in women's soccer, especially in Europe, where the rest of the world is catching up. And, if 2003 and 2007 didn't tell you that, if the 2016 Olympics didn't tell you that, then, I hope you don't get the message on Friday, but maybe you will. You have 7 European teams in the last 8 in the Women's World Cup. And the great part about France is the nation is invested. Back in 2011, when the World Cup was in Germany, France, I think, made the semifinal, am I right?
Yeah.
And no one was paying attention. And they were even complaining in the French press about how no one was taking them seriously, no one was paying attention. Now the TV ratings are off the chart. They're playing good, exciting, tactical soccer that's fun to watch. That's good for the growth of the game. Rising tide lifts all boats, doesn't it? So it would not be a fail. If they got blown out, if they got mollywopped on Friday, that would be maybe a different story. But if they're knocked out in a close loss, it's not a failure.
The bracket is what the bracket is.
Yeah.
And you just had a tough draw where you were put into a group because you knew this was a strong possibility.
Listen, if they would have tanked the match against Sweden and then they got knocked out before the final, then I'd say, yes, this World Cup was a failure. The fact that they went out and played Sweden
where would you
up,
be, though? You would be playing Germany in the next
match. Which wouldn't be much easier.
And Germany has been, in my mind, along with England, the 2 other contenders for the trophy.
Good point.
I mean, what's interesting about it from a long-term perspective, looking at this tournament, this bracket, I feel like England and Germany are the 2 who can benefit from some of the heavyweights battling early because they've got an easier road. And I could easily see an England-Germany final because of that, because whoever comes out of this U.S.-France game has to turn around and play England, most likely, if they get past Norway. If Norway pulls the upset, then we've got more chaos. But England should be able to benefit from that road, because U.S.-France is going to be a heavyweight battle that's going to take a lot out of whoever wins it.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. And it'll be fun to break down again on Friday. I think we'll be in a better spot to analyze that match. Right now I'm kind of focused on Atlanta United a little bit. But, just kind of looking at the rest of the landscape of where we are in soccer on this day. Here we sit in Canada. Canada has made it to the last 8 in Gold Cup.
And looked really good doing it.
Shout out to Curacao. That's awesome for them to get into the last 8 of Gold Cup. We mentioned Haiti on stoppage time. That's been great. This has been a unique summer so far. To see Venezuela make it in a knockout in Copa America, and I know we all want to get Joseph Martinez back to Atlanta United, but that's been great. And we've had some real intrigue in MLS all of a sudden over the last couple of days.
The transfer window hadn't even opened yet.
Right. and I mean, you're seeing reports and names and rumors right now. Some of them I don't really want to dignify by talking about because I don't think they're even logistically possible right now. There's one out there that MLS Soccer is peddling about Atlanta United that is not logistically possible right now.
I'm not buying that one, but there's some that are definitely it's definitely feasible, and there's some around the league too that are the new version of realistic, because 5 years ago they wouldn't have been realistic, but now you're talking about players in the 8 figures on a pretty regular basis in terms of transfer fees, and this league's ready for that, and they're ready to bring these players in. It's going to raise the level. Miami is being linked to multiple players already, which we expected in the summer window. The Galaxy are being linked to players from Boca Juniors. They're going to have to figure some things out with their roster if they're going to do that. It's a lot of stuff popping off, and the window doesn't even open until July 9th.
We got one from Prophet of Mars. So going back to our women's discussion for a moment, and I think this piggybacks onto something that John was talking about earlier today, but he points out that he knows Nike is tied to NWSL right now, but if that were to end anytime soon and Adidas gets in with NWSL, then Prophet of Mars 1 believes, and I hope you can hear me over the concrete mixer here, he believes that's the last step to getting the Atlanta United women. I'm not quite sure if it's that simple. I think there's more hurdles than that.
I think to call it that it is, because that's the reason Portland is the Thorns and not Portland Timbers women. It's because of the Nike-Adidas deal. And this is something that I think maybe women's professional sports has gotten it wrong on this, because there is a benefit to, if you follow UConn, the UConn Huskies women's basketball team, it's the Huskies. It's all the same. If you follow Manchester United now, you have the Manchester United women, and you're following it because it's part of the club. I think separating it has in some ways limited it. And if you're able to do it from a branding perspective to where you bring it together, and Portland's done a great job of that, and I think Real Salt Lake and Utah Royals have done a great job of that. North Carolina FC and the North Carolina Courage do a great job of that. It's still even easier if you don't have those marketing hurdles. Right. I don't think that's what's limiting Atlanta being in the league. I think there are other logistical hurdles to get through, but I really do think it'll happen sooner rather than later.
Speaking of North Carolina Courage, did you see we have another stadium draw now?
Love it. And I love that they're not making it dependent on MLS either.
Me too.
It's something that the USL Championship, North Carolina FC would play in, and the North Carolina Courage would play in NWSL. That's great. And I love that what they're doing in Raleigh is in a lot of ways similar to what Darren Van Tassel's doing in Statesboro, where you're using a soccer stadium to spur other development.
And I mean, it can go beyond USL Championship and NWSL. You can have the ACC Championship tournament there every year. You can have the men's and women's college cup there. I mean, they've done that in Cary already.
Yeah.
So it makes a lot of sense. I know a lot of people laugh when we see stadium drawings, but this one feels legit.
Yeah.
And I think this one would be great for Raleigh and the Triangle area. But I just think when you mentioned North Carolina Courage, I just want to get that out there. I love the drawing.
Yeah.
Looks great. It's aesthetically, and I mean, we don't know what it'll turn out to be, but aesthetically, it gets you just as excited as every drawing you've seen out of Austin to this point, every drawing that you've seen out of, Sacramento, whose bid is still a little bit theoretical, St. Louis, Indianapolis, Columbus's new stadium. It looks every bit the part of a big-time 20,000-seat soccer venue.
The look is great. Just don't forget radio booths, please.
Yes.
Please, don't forget the radio broadcast booth, like some people did.
Some teams have. See.
All right, let's turn it back to Toronto, finish up. Toronto tonight is coming off of a very bad loss in Dallas, where you mentioned it on stoppage time, and I think this tells you all you need to know about that game. Quentin Westberg was named to the bench of the team of the week in a 3-0 loss.
He's their goalkeeper, Toronto's goalkeeper.
It's like that. It was that kind of game. I want to see if they play 4 in the back or 5 in the back. I think they really, with the personnel, they have to play 5 in the back if Mavinga is not in the lineup or if he's not 100%, because you just don't have speed in the back. And I think you need the extra body if you don't have the speed.
Yeah, and I know some people will probably cringe at the idea of Toronto playing 5 in the back, but
with your outside backs, you can make it work where it's not overly defensive.
No,
you just need the extra body to help you cover because you have no speed with Drew Moore, Laurent Simon, and Eric Zavaleta.
But I also think, Jason, that Atlanta United has graduated from the point they were on April 20th when they lost to a bunkering Dallas team. I think now, and it started with a very small spark in the Colorado match, but we have seen teams, try to play a little more defensive against Atlanta United and fail. We saw it in U.S. Open Cup with Charleston. Eventually that was broken down. As I said, we saw it against Colorado. We saw it to a certain extent in the Minnesota and Chicago matches, maybe more so in Chicago. Atlanta United's further along now than they were at the beginning of the season when that was a true tactic by some teams. So I really like this opportunity for Atlanta United tonight. I would, if we left here tomorrow, Jason, with a point or less, I mean, I would even be okay with a point on the road.
Yeah, you take a point on the road.
If you don't get a result, a win or a draw out of this, it's a real missed opportunity, in my opinion. And it doesn't demean the quality of the result for Atlanta United if they win. You have to play against the team that's out there in front of you. Atlanta United will be shorthanded too.
Right.
And if Atlanta United wins this match tonight, I'll be curious if that's pointed out. I know there are a lot of negative people out there who are immediately going to revert back to the argument that, well, Toronto had maybe 7 guys out. Atlanta United has 4 starters out. That doesn't include Barco, who would be a starter. So it's not going to be an easy match. It's the last 2 MLS Cup champions. I feel like we've forgotten about that. Mm-hmm. And look, this is the site of one of the worst moments in club history.
Yep.
So you want to wash that taste out of your mouth. You might see these guys again in the playoffs.
This is a team you've never beaten either.
Here. You beat them in May.
Right.
You beat them in May, and that was the first time.
Right.
Otherwise, a draw and a loss here in Toronto. So, if you're going to see these guys in the playoffs, you got to make a statement. Mm-hmm. And you want to come into it with the confidence that no matter where you have to play them, wherever it may be, you can win a game against them.
You have to take advantage of a team that's missing their striker, 2 of their central midfielders, and then we'll see about Mavinga in the back. You could be really losing your spine here. And I thought that's what is shown for Toronto before the break started, and then it really showed up in that Dallas match. If Toronto goes with 4 in the back and it's Moore and Simon or Zavaleta for one of them, you have to get aggressive and go with them with speed. Brandon Vasquez can handle the physicality of it up top. He's deceptively quick. I don't know if I'd say fast in a 40-meter dash, but his first step is really good. He can lose guys, and he can also hold them off to create for others. And I think one of the big differences from the team that struggled to deal with bunkering teams to now is you've got 1v1 players who are winning those 1v1 battles. Dion Pereira, that's why he got into the team. Pity Martinez, we know what he can do 1v1. Justin Merrim is another 1v1 guy. He's one of the best dribblers in the league. If teams are going to sit behind the ball, you have to win your 1v1 battles to break them down, and Atlanta's done a really good job of that lately. They're going to have to do it tonight.
Yeah, it's going to be a lot of fun. I'm looking forward to it. We'll be on 92.9 the game at 7:30 with the 5 Stars countdown. 8 o'clock, the kickoff. Conditions won't be a factor. Although the last 3 or 4 matches we've said that there's been rain out of nowhere. But it doesn't look like it tonight.
I think we're okay so far.
It's going to be a beautiful night. Busy week. Just glad to be doing games again.
Yes.
It feels like it's been a year, even though it's only been 3.5 weeks, but really glad to get back into it.
Yeah, and tomorrow, not a morning show because we'll be flying back. Tomorrow, 6 o'clock will be the time for SDH. It'll be the PM show. We'll be talking about the Women's World Cup as well. First quarterfinal is tomorrow. We'll be talking about the U.S. men tonight. But we'll be talking a lot about Atlanta and Toronto and hopefully talking about a strong performance from Atlanta United. Thanks, everybody, for listening. We appreciate it. Mucho plata, y'all.
Mucho euros, y'all.